Welcome to Bench Racer X here on RacerXOnline.com. My name is Kellen Brauer, and I'm joined today by Donnie Southers, Mitch Kendra, and Jason Weigandt. And we're talking kind of silly season. There's been a lot of rumors floating around, and finally we have a few concrete things that have happened this morning, which it is Monday. Pro Circuit Kawasaki announced Max Vohland and Levi Kitchen joining their 250 program. And then Troy Lee Designs Red Bull GasGas announced Ryder DiFrancesco moving over to their program as well. So we saw a lot of people over the weekend saying goodbye to their teams of many years and so on and so forth. But really, I'll start with you, Weege. We kind of knew that these guys were going to sign with these teams, and we knew that this was coming. But what do you think of these moves initially on first thought with these three riders specifically?
Yeah, we did. I don't know how many people publicly knew that it was likely that Kitchen was, or really Kitchen had already signed with Pro Circuit. That was known, I'd say, pretty early into the Nationals, if not before the Nationals began. The Vohland thing with the interview you just put on our website, that really did come across much later. So I'll get to Vohland later, but the Kitchen thing was kind of already known. What's interesting to me is Pro Circuit's a great team with great history, lots of wins. It's hard to say that anyone going to Pro Circuit is making a step down. But I think people are forgetting how good Star Racing has been as of late. So it's slightly curious, slightly when a rider makes a move. It's hard for any team to be a lateral move or upgrade from Star and how successful that has been. Now, the good news is for Pro Circuit, they've been great over the last couple of months. So we'd hope that they're rolling out whatever they learned in those bikes. Shimoda and whatnot have been excellent the last couple of Nationals and through SMX. But either way, you're still leaving Star Racing. So it leaves to me the opportunity where it won't be as good because Star has been awfully hard to beat for any team over the last 10 years.
Well, Mitch, for you, you're a Levi Kitchen whisperer. We often say how much you love the Kitch there. But for you, being kind of a fan of what you've seen over the years with him and what he's done at Star Racing, what do you think of this move for him specifically? He's kind of the marquee guy, I think, so far in the moves that we've seen completed.
Yeah, like we were just saying, the Star team has been, the dominant team really since the backwards. The motor was changed in 2014 or 15, I think, right? So, multiple championships in Supercross and Motocross. So that's tough to argue for sure. And obviously, I ended up doing a story about the Pro Circuit team, through the end of Pro Motocross season. They had guys injured. Forkner got hurt in the first main event of the year, like 30 feet down the starting straight and stuff like that. So I just kind of talked about their season. And it was, how they didn't win, how they were struggling and stuff. And then right at the end, like you said, they found some bike adjustments and started clicking off laps, doing hole shots, deleting some laps, stuff like that. So I don't know. It's tough to say where exactly he'll be. He's kind of had that. If he gets a good start, he can win a race. And if he doesn't get a good start, he could be outside the top 10, outside the top 5. So it's tough to say for sure. Nobody really knows what to expect until we go to the first race, which I think is exciting. But again, it's going to be, we did see those bikes, we just had to see an improvement at the end of the year. So I think really if, it's not like he's going to a team where they can't get a start to save their lives. And it's not a completely bad bike. It's just the Star bike has just been that much better. So again, if they can continue, like we said, if they can continue that bike transition progress, it's the same model that they're going to be on next year. There's not a lot of changes there, so that'll help them. So again, if they can get those starts rolling again, I think he'll be okay.
And Donnie, of course, this is a very kind of exciting time of the year for the motocross community as a whole. Silly season, all these teams moving and such. From your perspective, what you've seen so far, the people saying goodbye to their old teams, the team shifts that we've already seen. What have you thought of this silly season, specifically this year, compared to some of the ones that we've seen in the past, and how it's developed so far?
It's been a bit anticlimactic because it feels like this year more than any year we've known for months. There's been a very few guys that we didn't know. Obviously, Vohland popping up late, and guys like Ferrandis, Jet Reynolds. We might not know the future, but there's just we've known about Chase Sexton for a year and a half. We obviously, even last year, we knew about Tomac very early going to Star. So it feels like the silly season in the past was such an exciting time, but now it's like we're just waiting for October 1st to be like, all right, come on, give us the announcements so that we can, actually talk about it with a little bit of a level of certainty. So been a little underwhelming, but it's also been, it's a good year, a lot of moves. So a lot of stuff that we can all bench race over for the next 3 months.
Well, as you just mentioned, Chase Sexton, we believe will be signing and announced with Red Bull KTM here shortly. Dylan Ferrandis potentially going to HEP Suzuki. And really, we've already seen a couple moves in the 450 class. Cooper Webb going to Monster Energy Yamaha Star Racing before even silly season, I guess, fully began. So going back to you, Weege, with these moves in the 450 class that we've already seen, now we're about to see maybe this Sexton move, this Ferrandis move. When Ken Roxon's deal gets signed, we're going to see that happen as well. What's your take so far on these moves and those riders specifically?
Yeah, it is absolutely hilarious how this 450 thing works. It's always greener grass, which we saw 2 years ago, right? Because you took Jason Anderson, Eli Tomac, and Malcolm Stewart, and the three of them just switched to three different teams, and they all did better on the next team, even though the guy leaving, like, for example, it would have been easy to say, Cowie's terrible. Look how much better Tomac got going to Yamaha, but Anderson got better going to Kawasaki than he was on Husqvarna, but then Malcolm went from Yamaha to Husky and also got better. So it's just a battle over greener pastures. To that point, here's what we're essentially seeing. Chase Sexton dying to get on a KTM because he didn't want to race Hondas anymore, while Cooper Webb is dying to get off of a KTM because he wants to ride Yamaha so badly. And I do think at some point Star had reached out to Sexton. And again, to your point, Donnie, this is a long time ago when these things started. I just don't think Sexton, for whatever reason, I don't believe he was interested. He just wanted to go to KTM, which is hilarious because, again, Webb was trying to get off KTM to go to Star. But maybe that's the answer to all this. It's just greener pastures. It's better somewhere else. And to try to nitpick which bike actually works, maybe it has nothing to do with that. But for sure, Sexton is going to show up with the #1 plate on a different brand. That's got to be the biggest news of all.
For sure. And it does seem about comfort with all these guys, and going to a place that they're comfortable with matters a lot for them. Going to you, Mitch, if we look at Chase Sexton going to Red Bull KTM, if we assume that Dylan Ferrandis does end up at HEP Suzuki, Cooper Webb has already ridden the Yamaha in 3 races now. Let's just talk about those 3 moves specifically. Of those guys, who do you think you look at as like, that is a really solid move for them? They're going to come out of this looking better than maybe they were before.
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, I don't know. Cooper Webb didn't look great in those first couple races on the Yamaha for SMX, and I think, even Weege asked him in the pre-race press conference of the first race, like, "Hey, are you expecting to just feel it out?" And he's like, "No, I'm here to win." And I think he got 9th in those races. Like, it wasn't a great night, and he said there was no excuses. He just got his ass kicked. But like, I think he, going back to like you're mentioning, the comfortability, like he worked with those people when they were a Star 250 team, factory team. It's kind of the same people, like suspension guys and stuff like that. I think that, and then, what he was, I guess, when technically he got on the bike, whatever, he's going to have a little bit of a head start on these other guys. Whereas, Sexton, maybe he's getting on the bike around now. We don't really know for sure. But I think that one is just going to be, again, in terms of comfortability, the people he's going to be around, he's going to have an extra couple of months on the bike. He was able to get, even if the races weren't great in Super Motocross, he's got at least a couple of races under his belt on the new generation bike, because he hasn't been on a 450 Yamaha since, a few years. He was on KTM for a few years. So it's like, all right, he's got those couple races under his belt. Again, the familiar people. He's going to be hungry to get a #1 plate back, because obviously the way he crashed out of it last year was a bummer, because he was right behind Tomac, right in the standings, I believe. So it's like, with those 3 factors, I think he's going to be the guy to watch. Everybody's going to have, Sexton's going to have the one plate is going to be heavy. He's going to have the target on his back. I think Cooper Webb's going to be the guy that comes in. And I think his move, to me, is kind of the one that, and again, it really doesn't even seem like silly season because it happened already and he raced on it. So it's kind of like, Donnie, like you were saying, we've kind of known about some of these things. And now that the Webb thing has happened, like, we're not waiting for a PR today about it because he already raced on the bike. So I just think he's going to be that guy that he's got that dog in him. He wants to fight late. Like, he's just going to come out swinging, I think, at Anaheim 1. And even if he doesn't have a great start, I think just having these extra couple of time on the bike and stuff like that is really going to show.
One thing that has flown under the radar with Chase Sexton leaving Honda is obviously there's a vacant seat alongside Jet Lawrence on a 450, which we believe will be filled by Hunter Lawrence. So it actually is going to end up being not only an all Lawrence brothers Honda HRC 450 team, an all rookie 450 Supercross team for Honda HRC next year. So Donnie, going to you, what do you think about that dynamic? You have 2 guys that have never raced a 450 in a Supercross trim before, both trying to, I guess, win for a championship after Honda's coming off a year where they won basically everything. Do you think that that's a good dynamic for Honda, or do you think this is one that it might bite them to not have a little bit more experience there?
It's definitely, you would like to say no pressure. You have 2 rookies coming in, no pressure. They're marketing machines. They don't even have to do that well. No pressure. But that's not the case. Jet just went 22-0. He obviously won the SMX finals, which was the Supercross round. Hunter's coming up wanting to prove himself that he's not just Jet's older brother, that he is also a bona fide race winning contender guy just alongside his brother. So it's rough, man. I don't know. Like it's and then obviously breaking the Ricky curse or whatever after 20 years, you would think that like, oh, it's not going to be any big deal. It's going to be all just cupcakes and rainbows. But like, no, those guys all of a sudden have turned that program around so quickly that I think there is going to be expectations. I think both of those riders are going to expect to win races this year, even as rookies.
Shifting back to the 250 class here to kind of wrap this whole thing up. We've only seen a few dominoes fall so far. There's still a lot more to come based on the riders that we saw over the weekend. Thanks to all the efforts of the teams over the years. So back to you, Weege. What sort of dominoes do we still expect to see fall in this 250 class over the next week or two?
Well, we'll start with Honda because you mentioned with Hunter Lawrence moving up, there's an obvious opening now in the 250 class full-time. And let's not forget, Jet was even a 250 rider at the beginning of 2023. So we believe it will be Joe Shimoda moving over there. So if you're pro circuit, you're really just trading Shimoda for Kitchen to go all the way back to where we were at the beginning. And for pro circuit, it's a great move. Replacing Shimoda will be tough, but Kitchen is right there with him. So that's fine for them. And then Shimoda to Honda, I think the real benefit there is I'm assuming he's already been friends with the Lawrences. He used to be teammates with them in the Geico Honda days, right? I'm assuming that he's going to get assimilated into their program, ride with them in Florida. I haven't heard that, but I've heard great things behind the scenes of what Dazzy Lawrence, for example, has done as far as bike setup and just building a program overall. And I would imagine that Shimoda is going to benefit from that. We even saw some signs. Remember Chance Hymas? You get a moto podium, I believe, at Thunder Valley. And there were Jet and Hunter high-fiving him, congratulating him. I think he's part of that as well. So that's the boost for Joe. I'm not sure that the Honda's better than the Kawasaki, but just being in this steamroller program, we're going to find out, is it just Lawrence brothers or is the program itself going to make anybody that good? So to me, that's one of the biggest moves. Shimoda, especially the way he ended the year going to Honda. I think it'd be tempting for everyone right now to say, whoa, Hayden Deegan was this good as a rookie and ended it as the SMX champ, and Hunter and Jet are no longer in the class. Look out. But Shimoda might be in line for a serious upgrade just being into that program.
Yeah, and so you got to remember he did race the Geico Honda 250 for a couple of years, and that he was a longtime Honda guy. So obviously the bikes had a little bit of update, and I think they've had some changes just in terms of bringing the 250F under the HRC tent. But like you said, kind of again to that comfortability, he's worked with some of those guys a little bit, so going to be interesting.
Yeah, and just to remind everybody, Hymas is back as well. He's just been out with a torn ACL. So I think a lot of people wondered, was bringing the Lawrences under the factory tent just a Lawrence thing when the Geico team went away? But now we've seen the investment. Honda is still committed to the 250 class, even post Lawrences, with both Hymas and Joe.
Another thing I want to point out with this 250 class, and specifically with the Austrian brands KTM, Husqvarna, and GasGas, they're all having a little bit of moving parts in the 250 class because with Vohland leaving KTM, they're calling up Julian Beaumer to fill that spot. Talon Hawkins and Jalek Swoll, we believe, both out at Husqvarna. That is going to be Casey Cochran's position. And then, of course, GasGas looks like they are moving on from Michael Moseman, who they've had for a long time, and having Ryder DiFrancesco step in. So for you, Donnie, what do you think of that dynamic? KTM kind of electing to go for fresher talent versus experience.
It's interesting because it feels like we had that long running, of grooming these riders up to take these things. And then the last few years, that hasn't really been, we've all talked about, is it going to change? But then it hasn't really worked out for the Austrian brands. They haven't had much success in the last few years. So maybe they're just rebooting to kind of their old strategy of promoting from within and giving guys, that shorter window to get it done. And I think it's interesting. I definitely think that those three teams had been stagnant for too long. I think for riders and teams involved, it's always good to get a fresh bike or a fresh rider under your tent, whatever it is, to just reinvigorate yourself. So I'm actually really excited. I think all of the incoming riders are going to do really well. And with that being said, I think the guys that got let go are going to be able to thrive wherever they end up.
Lastly, I'll pick this up with you, Mitch. We saw this year Hayden Deegan comes into Monster Energy Yamaha Star Racing as a rookie, basically, immediately finds success. Do you think, looking at that situation and now the fact that we just talked about all the KTM branded teams going with a little bit more younger talent flair, that we're going to start seeing a little bit of this old core in the 250 class, not necessarily getting phased out, but we're starting to see that switch over to like the next generation of stars we're seeing coming out of Loretta's?
So one thing I'll just touch upon, you guys talking about Ryder D, like I think we've kind of talked about it like on, I guess, offline, but he was only 18 this summer, and I mean I think he had a pretty solid year, but everybody compares it to Hayden Deegan, and yeah, it doesn't look as great obviously because Hayden Deegan had a few moto wins and stuff like that and overalls, but again, Ryder D was only 18, so it's like it's tough to compare the seasons exactly, but again, I think just like Donnie said, with going to like a new change of scenery, maybe that'll be good for him. But again, he's still young, so we could, we don't know how his potential is going to be yet. But with Deegan, I mean, again, everybody, nobody really knew where he was at until really last year. He did the Moto Combine at Redbud, and even his family, the team, were kind of like, oh wow, like this kid might be ready for this. And then he had that big jump, and obviously, his first futures race this year didn't go great. And then all of a sudden, the next weekend, he's pro in Houston and has a pretty solid race. And obviously, everyone knows what happened since then. But I don't know, it's kind of tough because we still like RJ Hampshire. He won the first moto this year, right? Outdoors. And Jordan Smith got a moto win there at the Super Motocross finale. Like, he looked like greatest he has in a handful of years. That was the first checkered flag I think he got since he won Daytona a couple years ago, right? In 2018 or something like that. So I don't want to say it's all going to be these new guys coming in because, again, like RJ Hampshire right there, like you mentioned, Smith, some of these older guys that are, I don't want to say Pierce Brown's not an older guy, but he's had a couple of seasons now as a pro. I think we're still kind of waiting on his breakout season, but I think like, I don't know, it's tough to count out the old guys. Again, like Jordan Smith, we were really sure he was where he was at, but he got on Star like I believe last summer and just started training. He wasn't racing, but he was just riding and just training, and everybody's like, oh, he's washed up, and I think he just had a couple run-ins in Supercross and stuff, but man, he had a really solid year. Like there was a point at the last moto of the year where he could win a championship the way everything was falling and stuff. So I don't want to say count out the old guys, but there's just a lot more new guys coming in, just the way the face of the sport is. Like you said, with Beaumare coming in and coming from Europe, Mark Finnis, Casey Cochran, some of these younger guys that are just getting shuffled in. And it's, we do have some guys that are, 7, 8, 9 years younger than the guys they're racing against, where some guys are learning from the older guys, the older guys are learning from the younger guys. So it's really, again, just tough to say who's going to be, the old guys with experience win, or the fast guys that can just take a hit and get up again, keep going. It's going to be fun for sure, because I think that is going to be a nice butting of the heads of, again, maybe on-track run-ins between the young vets and the older guys. So.
Yes, indeed. Well, silly season is always a fun time of the year to see where these guys go and shift around. And that's kind of our update so far. We've got 3 new signees this morning here on Monday, just after the October 1st switchover, when we see all these new contracts shift. So that's us kind of talking about it. As we get more contract news coming around, we'll be sure to update you guys at all the contract news that's happening when it comes and when it drops. But thank you, Weege, Donnie, Mitch. Thanks, guys, for tuning in to Bench Racer X here on RacerXOnline.com. Be sure to visit RacerXOnline.com for all your motocross and supercross news, and we'll see you in the next episode.